From the elemental harmony of the Japanese garden to the geometrical harmony of origami. The artistic appearance can often distract from the underlying principles, but it's these very principles that are making the art of paper folding such a great way of teaching maths, or so maths educator Hugh Gribben believes. Welcome, Hugh.
Hi, John.
Yeah, look, tell me first off, Hugh, how did you get interested in origami in the first place?
Well, I've always done it as a kid, I guess, but I didn't have a particular connection with it until I was training to be a maths teacher. I heard about a guy who was an origami man, and I can't quite remember why, but I invited him along to talk to our teacher trainee group. And he showed us some folding, and we saw the maths, and it was just fantastic. And I've been able to put the mathematical perspective into the paper folding that he didn't have. So we've been a good team.
Was it based on mathematical principles, origami, or was that something that we learned about later?
Traditionally, it was an aesthetic thing. I mean, the mathematics of folding a page in half is perhaps always there, but it was an aesthetic thing. There were a couple of hundred models that have been done for several hundred years, and it was really the 20th century that's started exploring that and pulling it out. What else can we do with this? What maths is here is some of the questions that get asked, yeah.
So initially it was purely aesthetic, it was purely an art form that looked great.
Absolutely. It's always been good in education. Yep. It's been used in kindergartens and things, but it's had a role for women and children traditionally in Japan. Yep. Yeah.
So how is it a great way or a great tool for you to teach maths at an older level, a more sophisticated level?
Well, first of all, it's tangible, and that's something that kids often haven't been doing much of in a maths class. They're doing maths with their hands, and some kids, the abstraction, thinking about it, works fine, but I've seen kids who the teachers don't think do very well in the maths class get their hands on origami and make fantastic stuff and learn right there with their hands. So there's that kinesthetic learning thing, a different learning style. But there's also aesthetic questions, making origami, making something beautiful. We want to make it look good. Sometimes we decide what looks good with mathematical principles. Symmetry is the obvious one here.
And so in fact the beauty is actually the way into the mathematical principles.
That's right.
In and of itself.
I mean, there are other things that work, and that's one focus that I like to look at. Other people might look at the practicality of it, because using folding, you can model folding all sorts of things with folding paper.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have trouble folding a mat, so, you know, I can clearly learn a lot from this. But what is a good example, a simple example that you might use in terms of a folded structure to teach a principle? Just tell us about something.
Yeah, well, I've got one. A favourite of mine that I've talked about before is there was a book, Geometric Exercises in Paper Folding, that came out in 1893 by Sadara Rowe. He talks about taking a square of paper and folding the corners in to the middle, and you get another little square inside it. And then you take those corners of that square and fold it in, and you get another little square inside, and you get this series of collapsing squares. Well, I can relate that to a geometric sequence that the students might be studying at Year 5, Year 11 at school, and show that the origami shows that converges, that the sequence comes to a sum.
So the principles of geometry are just a perfect way to use origami.
Absolutely.
To get those abstract concepts into something, as you say, completely tactile, hands-on.
Yes.
I mean, for example, if my maths teacher showed me how to make a decent water bomb, I would have been, you know, front of the class, you know, right there, or indeed a really good dart. Because we all made darts.
All of these things are good, and there's lots of mathematics that can be extracted there. Geometry is the obvious one, but you can attach the mathematics, attach the geometry to a number of shapes and learn about a parabola. You can learn about a series, like I just mentioned. Lots of different branches of mathematics through this. Abstract algebra is one that comes to mind.
Yeah. Okay.
So quite high-powered mathematics as well.
Okay, so it's helpful at a teaching level. Does it have any practical applications in the real world?
Yeah, it's had a lot of application recently. One thing that happened was Robert Lang developed some software to make these crazy origami models of things like his famous cuckoo clock with all sorts of features. Now, that took an abstraction, an idea, and turned it into something we can fold. That piece of software got modified and used by people designing airbags, because airbags have to fold up small, they have to unfold quickly, they have to unfold safely. All these restraints were solved using this tree maker, this piece of software.
That's what the software is called, Tree Maker.
Yeah, I should qualify that, because he developed it, but it got used, it got modified and used for the airbag designers.
Okay, so so they can take something like an airbag and go, okay, let's run this through the program. What's the most efficient and safe way for this to unfold?
And how can we fold it up small enough that it fits into this tiny little space behind the steering wheel? Yeah, all of those things.
And just going back to the cuckoo clock for a minute, was that all folded from a single sheet? Yeah. So that whole intricate...
One piece. Traditionally, and this has been changed a little, but traditionally origami is one piece of paper. No cutting, no stapling or tearing or anything else. One modern 20th century variation on that, although it was around, is modular origami, where you take a square and you make a simple shape, repeat that a lot, and then weave the shapes together. And I like to use those for teaching some geometric shapes. In fact, I've lectured a class at first year maths making some beautiful shapes on that with that sort of model.
Okay, so we've got in terms of industry and practical applications, we've got the airbag. Is there anything else that they used origami for?
There's here we go. We can go micro, we can go macro. On the micro,
Yep.
the stent, a little thing that goes into your blood vessels and helps strengthen the walls of your arteries. If you've got, your walls of your arteries are a bit loose.
Too many pizzas, that sort of thing.
Pizzas and good red wine.
Yeah.
And the stent has to be very small until it gets to the right place, and then it has to open up and lock in place. And that uses an origami mechanism, essentially a water bomb mechanism.
Your basic
You
water.
got it,
I knew
yeah.
there was going to be a good use for the water bomb.
And on the macro again, in the space program, origami gets used a lot, because one of the things that happens in the space program, we've got to take structures up to space in the space shuttle. Now the space shuttle room is at a real premium, so it's got to be small. The other thing is, once it gets there, it can't have a real complicated unfolding process, so it's got to unfold simply. And the robotics has to be, well, I think they can use gravity only to unfold solar panels that might go up. And Miura Ori is actually one fold that I encountered when I was in Japan. This guy, Miura Koryo, was a professor, and he developed a fold that gets used for maps, actually. And it folds the solar panel up very small and opens it up very simply.
So do you have a favourite shape that you like to fold?
I guess a number of them, but one I use a lot is an Archimedean solid. I've got one here. You can see it's got squares and triangles. This is a very simple modular thing, and I just stick it together. What I've actually done here is I've got two different ones, and I put this one inside the big one. This one inside is an octahedron, and this is a little more irregular, cuboctahedron.
Oh yeah, it looked like your basic octahedron to me.
There we go.
First thing I said when I saw it. Yeah. So, and what is that helpful to teach? Or illustrate in terms of...
I get it. The whole process of folding in general is following rules and learning mathematical structure in that sense, but colouring this in the right way, making it symmetrical, making it look good. So that's what we were talking about before. Making it look pleasing, and there are a number of possibilities. You have to think mathematically to organise it, because I've got around the triangles, I've got one of each colour. Well, I can't have one of each colour around the squares if I've only got three colours, so I've gone for pairs of opposites. I mean, they're small aesthetic decisions, and I've got other models that require more complex aesthetics decisions that then lead you to think about the mathematics of it. But there's a couple of things that I do with this. Yeah.
Have you thought about interior decorating? Because I think you throw a light in that, you hang it down, it's going to look really good.
People have done just that sort of thing, and the light bulb comes on and they look fantastic.
So, Hugh, thanks very much for talking to us today. Really appreciate it.
Great pleasure.